Members of the public are welcome to film, audio record, photograph or tweet the public proceedings of the meeting. I'd ask anyone in the room to please be considerate towards others and take care not to disturb the proceedings. For members of the committee, we have new microphones this evening, and they only record when you press the red button. When you finish speaking, if you turn them off, and when you speak, if you could get fairly close to them so it can pick up the audio tube record. We received any apologies for the meeting?
We've received apologies from Cal Johnson, Philip Kent.
Thank you. Confirmation of voting members. Yep. I've agreed to accept item 6A on housing savings as late and urgent. And I have agreed to vary the order of business to move item 12, the update from the corporate fraud team, to after item 9, the Treasury Management update. Does any member wish to declare any interest or dispensation in respect of any item or issue to be considered at? Can members approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 5th September 2024? We now come to a first item, which is item 6, governance conversation. Assistant Chief Secretary for Strategy and Communities. And we have with us tonight Rona Cadenhead, is Interim Assistant Chief Executive for Strategy and Communities. Welcome. Would you like to present?
I hope I've got that right. It's working good. Thanks for inviting me here tonight. So I am covering for Stephen Gaskell, who's leaving imminently, and have been covering the role for about 5 weeks. So I really welcome the chance to have an early conversation about the governance of the department and the plan over the next 6 months, which I think will be very helpful feedback. So I've given a quick overview of the senior structure in strategy and communities. It basically covers strategy and change programs. It coordinates community engagement across the council, communicates with residents, and supports the council's performance management framework. It also facilitates much of the informal governance of the council. So, for instance, the council's management team meetings and the leaders board, where the leader gets assurance on delivery and all the different portfolios. So it's a relatively new department, so it's still being formed and still being developed. So again, the governance conversation tonight will help with some of that development, and there's quite a number of priorities to do moving forward to make sure that the governance is fit for purpose and is supporting the wider governance of the organisation. On the next slide, I've outlined some of the priorities in the next 6 months. As I say, not all the teams are established at the moment, and there's definitely scope for further work to do so, and to ensure that all of the governance priorities are reflected in the work that they do. So the first priority for the next 6 months is about the development of the department. Not all of the structures are complete, and not all of the recruitment is finished. So that is a significant priority. The department also hasn't quite developed its service offer to the organisation and its ways of working with the wider council and partners. That's a key priority, and it also needs to establish its own governance framework to ensure that the work that it's doing is meeting required standards and can evidence outcomes for the organisation and for the investment in it. The department looks after the overall governance and delivery of the 2030 strategy, or it will when we move into the new the refreshed council delivery plan. So in the next few months we'll be supporting the development of the refreshed council delivery plan, the outcomes framework linked to the 2030 strategy, and the partnership action plan. As part of that, we'll develop a new performance framework and also ensure that the organisation can have assurance on the delivery of the refreshed council delivery plan. We also need to work with services to support the delivery of that. So all the services that are within strategy and communities will play a key role in supporting the delivery within different service areas. Then secondly, and I know that Eddie is having some conversations with members at the moment, we're going to develop and complete a new corporate communications strategy, and there are meetings this week with members about that. And we're also going to review the skills and the structure of the communications team, and that will be a priority that will be put into action early in 2020. The anchor partnership that will look after 2030 and the corporate and strategic partnership model will be developed as part of the priorities of the department. And also key priority, which is a priority across the whole of the council, is to increase our use of business intelligence and our ability to access and use data, which is a regular priority right the way across the council, so that we can understand our communities better and apply that understanding to the service provision. And on the next slide, I've outlined some of the broadening out those priorities and thinking about how we work and the framework that we work to. Completing the design of the department and the clear service offers is obviously a way in which we can monitor our progress and monitor whether we're meeting the needs of the organisation. We do need to look internally at the governance processes to make sure that there's clear alignment between the Council Delivery Plan and the Southwark 2030 ambitions. We definitely need better capabilities and understanding of our data gaps so that we can make sure that we're responding to needs better, and there will be definitely some underpinning governance and ways of working that will need to support that. The governance within the department needs to be clearer to make sure that we're providing value for money and reporting value for money to the organisation. The coordination of Southwark 2030 was definitely going to require some changed governance and some different approaches to partnership working. And again, the last thing there, the service offer to support service challenges. So at the moment, there's no service offer to the rest of the organisation, which in areas that might be experiencing challenges such as housing, and that is something that we need to develop as part of the service offer to the rest of the organisation. In terms of governance and budget, so within the department, we have fortnightly management team meetings, and that reviews progress of work and priority work across the area, and developing a departmental forward plan to make sure that there's appropriate departmental governance of budget and decision making at those team meetings. We also look after informal governance meetings such as the Council CMT, lead member briefings and the strategic policy board, and there is an integrated forward plan now that supports those meetings and is reviewed each week at CMT and then at the appropriate meetings that are being looked after. And there's a draft scheme of delegation for the department which needs a little bit of revision, but that will be completed before the end of the year. We don't currently have milestones and measures for the department to make sure that performance is within agreed standards. So again, that will be a priority as the service offer is finalised. And lastly, one of the first things I've done in covering for the role is to meet with all of the heads of service within the department and to clearly set out my expectations of staff and budget management together as a team. On budgets, at present we're due to come in under planned budget. I'm doing a full review of the staffing establishment because it's still a developing department. I want to make sure that we know exactly what our staffing establishment is, and I'm holding monthly budget reviews with finance. I've added the end, which I'll circulate later, just all the service descriptions, so you know what's in the department. I wouldn't intend to go through them with you tonight.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Do members have any questions for the officer? Laura.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to ask you, you mentioned the word budget, I think, towards the end, anyway. This all all brilliant and it's brilliant, etc. But if but always moving forward, I understand that, and it's good to keep on track and keep our community, etc., communities, etc. But I just wonder, if with all these changes, all this sort of change, different people have come around, and everybody wants to make a change, etc., and develop different things, and everyone's trying to make a difference to improve our organisation. But won't it lead to more costs, more spending, or don't foresee that at all? Changes, are good, but I'm more on the cost.
So I think Structuring communities is mainly staffing cost, and there's very little scope outside the staffing cost. It's a centralised department, so it's not, it doesn't have challenges of delivering frontline or services directly to residents. So I think in that sense, it should be very easy to stay within budget. So there's an agreed budget provision for the current year. I think that needs further review over the next couple of years. I don't think that's necessarily to grow costs, but to make it more effective in the work that we do, and to make sure that we're delivering the services and support that the council. So at the moment, it should be easy to stay within costs because it's a staffing budget rather than anything else. Any additional
number?
Yeah. Any additional spend would be via a business case resource that would be perhaps there's a 2030 fund, for instance, so it could that we make business cases towards that to do specific pieces of work that are linked to the council delivery plan, but that would go through Clive as the monitoring officer and through any appropriate governance to ensure that that was agreed in line with the council's constitution. So I think we absolutely need to keep a grip of costs, and we need to make sure that we're spending it.
Michael.
Again, thank you very much for the presentation. I think picking on Councillor Dora Dixon Fowl kind of raised the issue, but slightly separate relation to. I mean, it seems very clear that there's quite a lot of changes, including the current Assistant Chief Executive Living Soonest, where it seems that a lot of how we're going to be able to kind of achieve what we said to achieve will be dependent on having the right people in place. It would be really useful to hear how we're doing in kind of recruitment in terms of filling those key positions within the department, and whether you think we're getting the right skills, or whether there are challenges within the market, and what you think, whether you think that there's likely to be implications in that in terms of achieving some of the kind of outcomes which you said.
Thank you. I think there's been some very strong recruitment. So the Director of Communications who's been appointed has very clear plans in place, and we're already seeing some evidence of some of increased performance in that space. And so for instance, the council is trying to make sure it grows its channels so it can talk directly to residents. So whether that's through social media, whether it's through the council's e-newsletter, which is the biggest communication tool that we have. There's clear progress there. The evidence is that the new team there is really beginning to deliver, especially communications. We need to make sure we've got the right skills in place constantly, because all of that is just changing so quickly. We have to make sure that we keep up to date with that, and that we can make sure that we have good evidence that we're actually making an impact, because value for money in communications is incredibly important. So I think there's been very strong recruitment in that area. I think in other areas that has proven a little bit challenging. So there was recently in the restructure that the Assistant Chief Executive did, there was, for instance, a head of service for service design, couldn't recruit to it. So the organisation's gone out twice for that. So we're going to relook at that and think, is it that market can't supply what we want, or is it we asking for the wrong thing? So we're going to review that and keep that under review. But definitely there was a determination not to make the wrong appointments, that we really needed the skills that could deliver change there. So I think it's a balance, and I think it depends on the job that we're going out with. But what I'm seeing across the department is some very strong recruitment and some very highly skilled people joining them.
Are there any actions that we want to take coming out of this conversation? Thank you very much. I agree to take the item on housing briefing on savings, 6A, late and urgent. Is it Hakeem? Do you wish to come forward? Tim. Wish to present.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, all. This paper, which is about the savings that the HRA is scheduled to make in this financial year and the next, it's split into two major parts, as you would have noticed. One gives an explanation of the savings, on which areas we want to achieve those savings and how. And the second part lists, the savings that we want to make, and which officer within the housing department is accountable for making them. Members of the committee will know that the housing revenue account is a ring-fenced account, which means that all of the income from rent and service charges that go into the account can only be spent on the management of those properties that the council owns as a landlord, of which there are about 55,000. The income into the HRA this year is estimated to be about £345 million. But the expenditure over the last few years has been greater than the income, which has meant borrowing, in addition to overspends. Considering that legally the HRA has to be balanced on a yearly basis, it means that we have to make some changes into the way that we deliver the services to ensure that we are spending within our means, in effect, and we're seeking to do this without having to reduce the service being delivered to residents. And therefore, we're looking to do that by being more efficient, by increasing our productivity in certain areas, and by finding modern ways of delivering our services.
Have any questions for the officer?
I think for councillors, it's we get presented with this. It's kind of looking at it and seeing actually, if we fast forward 1 year, are we really going to kind of achieve this kind of savings itself? It'll be really useful to hear from you why you think actually some of the savings in which you suggested here, that we're more likely to kind of achieve it this time around than perhaps before. When I point to IT, for example, I'm not so sure whether that is a separate IT within housing, separate from the wider kind of council as a whole, where we've already, in previous budget rounds, suggested that we'll make savings through efficiency itself. So it would be really useful to hear whether this kind of savings are particular to housing. What aspect do you think? How do you see that manifesting itself in terms of savings?
So this savings in this paper, including the IT 1.1 million, are specific to housing, and they are mainly about the IT systems we use in delivering our repair service. Because the IT system for repair service can do many things that can make the service more efficient. For example, dynamic scheduling, which means, to be quite simple, a plumbing job is raised on the system. The system searches for the nearest plumber to that area and allocates the job to them. Without that system, we allocate to a plumber who could be at the end of the borough, for example. And therefore, they could, the cost of them traveling to the other side of the diesel they're going to use, the time they're going to spend, all of those things can be saved simply by introducing that kind of IT system. So that's just giving an example. In terms of giving confidence about the savings, this is something I have gone through with my team. There are some difficult things to do there. There's no doubt about it. If they were easy, we would have done them already. But I have a medium to high level of confidence that we should be able to deliver, if not all, but the majority of these savings.
Laura and Andy.
Thank you, Chair. You must be speaking to the same people I was speaking to when I was TNRA. Because I got into the wall by this chap who said, "Right, first time coming back all the time. They keep coming back. It's more money." And he just pinned me there for about 20 minutes, telling me all the instructions on them. But it's funny you should say that. I mean, I wish that could happen. That save a lot of money and make a lot of tenants out there really happy. So I look forward to that coming out. And also, is there anything we can do to actually where our local residents about cost of living and about people being out of work, etc. And we're always recruiting, we're always recruiting plumbers, electricians, but they're coming from far away, from borough to actually, we not find our own local people who live locally as well. We won't have to travel too far to come share something, maybe talk.
It is certainly an idea. We in the repair service, we have an aging workforce, and that's not been disparaging with them. They're good people who have worked for the borough a long time and know what they're doing and do well. But it means that we need to have succession planning. Our apprenticeship schemes have not been great in the last few years. We used to be very good at this, but we haven't been in the last few years. So we are reintroducing the apprenticeship scheme, and the idea behind that is to make sure that we take on local people and train them to start taking over from existing staff as they retire. We are also introducing a system through a platform called Plentifig, which is designed to employ local contractors, to deliver our repair service for us. And by using local contractors, we expect that local contractors usually will recruit local people as well. So it's either we have directly employed local people or we have contractors who are employing local people to work with them on our behalf.
That sounds good. And when we did something similar in education, we had local people. So I think again, just got in the borough, and we can be into in local people again and be working locally. That's a good idea. I mean, Thank you.
Thanks very much for the helpful. I could probably keep you here all night, but I'll go for a couple of questions. So, number one on the efficiencies, customer services, centre. Complaints aren't working very well, according to reports in the last week coming out. What's the plan to be able to make savings, but then also to still deliver a functioning contact and get working in a timely manner and making the regulator and the
thank you for that. for me, more importantly than making the regulator and the ombudsman happy is making our residents happy. The analysis of our complaints shows that there are too many repeat complaints, and there are too many escalations where we fail to, to address the issue first time. So what we've done is we've set up a housing complaints team, a team dedicated specifically to investigate housing complaints, because at the moment, housing complaints are being investigated by officers in the teams that are being complained about, which sometimes can lead to a culture of being defensive. So by having an independent team, not only are they going to investigate thoroughly, but they're also going to analyze the themes around the complaints, the issues that we're filling in, and make recommendations to individual services about what they need to do to get things better. And I believe that with that, over time, it's not going to happen overnight, of course, but over time, the services will learn from that. Things will change. Our residents we will listen to them better. We will show more empathy, and we will address their issues in a quicker, more efficient way, and therefore will build trust and grow confidence in the service. So that's the plan around that. And we also know, and I know my colleague Dominic is in the room, that a lot of the calls that go to the contact center are avoidable calls as a result of complaints or promises that we've made that we haven't delivered, or appointments that we've made that we haven't attended. So by learning through complaints, by understanding the things that we're getting wrong, and hopefully changing the culture around those things would reduce the number of calls going into the contact center. It's going to take time. I need to keep repeating that. But we understand what the issues are. We know the things we need to do, and we've started to do them.
Slightly separate follow-up question. So at the moment, we've got finance taking a particular interest in recovery. You said it's going to take time, and I understand it do take time. When do you think housing will be in a condition where you can stand on your own, where you don't need some help interventions, challenge?
Oh, we're housing. We're always going to. Clive is never going to leave me alone. That's for sure. But this is so the council has made a decision that becoming a good landlord is a priority for us. We're all very clear on that. We've got an action plan that is going to take us to our destination. But that action plan doesn't have an end date to it. But we have started, to deliver some of those actions. Any manager will tell you that it takes about 3 years or so to turn things around. I would hope that it doesn't take that long for us to start seeing, or seeing the dividends of some of the actions we're taking now and we'll take in the next few months. But I would say to you that, because the issues are, for example, if you take our repair service, to start to do repairs, get them right first time, to stop repeat visits, to do dynamic scheduling, for us to be able to make appointments, within an appointment window rather than a whole day with people. All of those things are being done by other DLOs at the moment. So we can do them. But there are things that we need to talk to our own colleagues about, and to change our computer systems to make them work for people to learn to do things in a different way. So it is clear in my head the things that we need to do, and my team are understanding of all of this. But I cannot say to you exactly when I believe that everything will be hunky-dory. But in terms of finances, the savings plan is to make sure that by the end of next financial year, we're back to breaking even.
And I'll stretch the chair's indulgence with one last question, which is, we have in the past been proud of our resident engagement. Part of that has been going out to residents with financial plans, sometimes not many options on the table, but enabling us to consult them. That didn't happen last year for the first time in 30+ years. That is regrettable. Will we be in a position to do that this year? If not, can you absolutely guarantee we'll be in it next year? Because I want us to be out there engaging and involving residents on the sometimes tough decisions that are made, services they are paying for.
We're doing it this year.
I've got Clive that wants to come in, then I've got Graham, and then I've got Laura. But I would remind members that, or inform members, that Hakeem is coming to the next meeting in February by the housing question. So, Clive.
I think the moment probably past, Chair. I was just going to make some further comments on the customer services side of Hakeem has covered. Current stats at the moment are showing the contact reasonably well at the moment. The area where we are struggling is repeat calls, as Hakeem says. Work continues in that space, but that needs to be addressed at source rather than at customer interface point. But other than that, the centre is holding up reasonably well at the moment. As we launch into winter, that starts getting increasingly difficult for us, particularly in the current environment where we don't have available to us that potentially the organisation has in previous years. So we're unable to resource up in the way that potentially we have done in the past, but we have a plan for the winter and we're way through it. The one caveat I would put on the finances, so yes, we have a recovery plan that should see us 2026. So there is a fundamental flaw with the HRA in the sense that we are limited by putting up our income to CPI plus 1%. That is lower than costs are falling on the HRA through construction and wage inflation and such like. So at the moment, the way the HRAs are operating in the country, there's an inherent mismatch between the income we can generate and the costs we're likely to realise. So yes, we will deliver on this, and as Councillor says, we need first time plays. But I can't guarantee that we won't be back here in 12 months with an additional gap because of the way in which the HRAs are set up nationally within the budget.
Right.
Okay. Hakim, you may know I'm a council tenant. Wanted to thank you and your team for offering, on the whole, an excellent service, very good price. On the problems got forward to you. Thank you for that. Got a couple of questions, if I may. I also serve on the Environment Scrutiny Committee, and from time to time we talk about the use of cars. On the whole, the council wants to reduce car use, car dependency. Car parking on our housing estate seems to be a very low cost to the car users. The cost of storage of cars on our estates seems to be externalised. And as a council tenant who isn't a car user, I end up paying for parking maintenance. If that's an opportunity for revenue raising, document we submitted, it seems to be about savings. There's an opportunity for me to share that with you. They seem to go hand in hand. And also, I wondered, if I may, a second question, moving on from Andy's point, about the how well we've managed to involve residents. Got a lot, as Andy said, we've got a long history of resident involvement. How our tenants have been involved in this document. Thank you.
I think I can answer both questions with one answer because they're linked, at least through the answer. What we charge for parking, garages and so forth, are part of the proposals that we will be consulting tenants on as part of the engagement process for rent and service charge increases for next financial year. But I need to sound a note of warning there. I think Clive alluded to this. The government sets by how much we increase rent. So it will be disingenuous to say to tenants, we want to consult you about rent increases, because the reality is that decision is made. However, there are some flexibilities on what we spend the money on, and in some cases, how we increase service charges, depending on the level of services that we're delivering. Because we have a statutory obligation to recover our cost in full when we're delivering services. So the discussion and engagement with residents about what they're going to be paying next year for their rent and service charges is limited in truth, to very small areas where there is flexibility. But on that discussion, on that flexibility, we will be having that discussion in full. There's a full program that has been designed for this, and that will be going into the report that colleagues are preparing. We're looking to increase the influence or impact residents have on some decision making on the monies that we spend on their estates, where there is an ability to do so. So that the consultation is not simply talking shop.
Thank you. Dora.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one. So you talked about having a separate team to look into these complaints, which is fantastic. But just want to reiterate needed that this complaints team needs to have teeth, needs to have bite. Otherwise, just back to the same old. No, it's not true. We've not fixed this. We have fixed this, not etc. And they're just left to the councillors to say, look, no, this hasn't been done, as the tenant is saying. And you've got people on the end of the phone saying, no, we don't believe that this never happened. Do you know what I mean? So that there's two ways of looking at things. So if we're going to have a separate team that actually does what you've said it will do, which we'll be all very happy about that. But we need to have people who are not just going to look at or just hear what's happening. We need to be there to see it, maybe take photographs, maybe just actually investigate what tenants are saying. Otherwise, it's just left to us. I'm sure something has gone through your mind. I'm sure you're thinking about it and you're smiling. Okay, I'll leave it at that. I'm sure that you're into this 100%. You need to improve the housing repairs, because most of our complaints come from.
I want to assure the committee that the complaints team, the ways the team is designed, what they're going to do, how they're going to do it, means that they have to. They effectively have the power I have, to ask people, to call people to action, and to take them to account on the issues that they do in their own services.
Yeah, and we've all got the same will. So, thank you.
How is the budget recovery process going?
Very well. Myself and Clive. It's not easy having to find the level of savings we have to find within the HRA, ensuring that we do not reduce the level of service we're providing to residents, and we do not reduce the quality of it either. But there are opportunities to make ourselves a lot more efficient, and those are the areas that we're looking at.
And in the report, and I was aware of this, one of the things that I wasn't, sure about that was the alternative financing. So taking on temporary short-term borrowing. Was there any discussions with the external auditor aspect of the recovery?
No, it doesn't require discussion with the external auditor. Borrowing is something that we do largely for new build, but last year we did asset management, digital work stuff there. So it's a last resort, really. If you're in a position where you are spending more fix that by using reserves, which are dwindling, or you can borrow for some things that you prefer not to borrow. It's not something that will require an audit, something we're able to do. It's just something we prefer not to do. We're having to take additional measures and to just make sure.
Thank you. Are there any actions that we want to take coming outside? Thank you.
Thank you.
Now move on to item 7, the cyber security update. Welcome. Could you introduce yourselves?
Yeah, my name's Dion Lowndes. I'm the digital based at Southwark.
Fabio Negro, Managing Director of the Shared Service, and Lewisham and Southwark.
Would you like to present your report?
Okay, so I'll hand over to Fabio, but I'm going to just do the overview of paper. Clearly from the paper that was brought before, we work closely with the Shared Technology Service, so it's a dual ability. Following on from the discussion that took place at an earlier committee, I wanted to come back with this paper to give assurance around the areas that were raised, but also to give an overview of our approach to cybersecurity, as it's quite technical, but quite helpful to set that landscape of how we with this increasing area. So for us, we've been working with the central government framework, and we've worked to develop a digital and technology strategy through 2024 and 26, and this was an area that was highlighted as key performance. It's really important that we prioritise cybersecurity, and it's a constantly evolving landscape. The conflicts that happen, there's increasing threats that mean that we have to change the way that we work and constantly approach. So central government have helpfully brought out a new cybersecurity framework. We were working with frameworks before. This really helps us to ensure that we appropriately manage risk, protect ourselves from attack, and prevent through detection, and have suitably robust and expedient plans to minimize impact. So this strategy sits within the technology and strategy framework, and there is an underpinning library policies created to ensure our staff follow the necessary practices. Some of the items that we'll cover is about how we improve staff, how they get the relevant training, and Fabio will cover so that's it. There's actually been a within the National Cybersecurity Centre cyber assessment framework, which has been called a CAF Lite. We actually have been one of the pioneering councils who've worked on this with the Ministry of Housing and Local Government. And what this does is give us a starting point, a baseline of where we currently sit. It does comparisons across other local authorities on good practice. We opted to volunteer for inclusion within this group, as we thought it was important to get this mandate and framework. It consists of sets supporting cybersecurity and resilient principles, and it's helping us to set that framework for these recommendations that were discussed, which we'll go on to. So this is an evolving piece of work, and submission was actually the other week, and we will hear the outcome later in the year. It's not a pass or fail exercise, but it will provide us further independent analysis of the efficiency of areas in conjunction with the BPO report with a more granular and technical nature. So this is helping us to set that frame. And the outcome, as I discussed, will be the baseline of our current position. And so some of the areas that we've worked on, and then I'll be able to go into some of the granular detail that was discussed previously, is that we've set a plan to create a mitigation, a set of actions for each risk. And we've got a comprehensive staff training programme already. We've had an uptake in that because we've changed from a more heavy assessment framework, which staff fed back that they found quite intimidating, to bite-sized videos. And we've already found an increase in 12% of people watching those videos. We've also been doing phishing attacks, so that we've done the staged sessions of do not click on this and advice to people. And we're continuing that with face-to-face workshops and working with some of our hard-to-reach groups, so our frontline workers, face discussions to help them with that. We've also set in place some new boards. So we have an information and governance security group, which is chaired by our head of technology and transformation. This is a very much a action group where they mitigate any risk and do quite tactical delivery. There's a CSIRO board, which is chaired by Strategic Director of Resources, Guy Pelperman, and I attend along with the Southwark Shared Technology Service Head of Cyber Security, so that there is a representation from the Technology Service. And it's also attended by information and staff members within Southwark to ensure that we address any data breaches and any of the remedial actions that we need to take. So that is the kind of overview of the strategy and approach. And then Fabio will now just go into some of the detail of the aspects.
Yeah. So I won't go into too much detail, but I'm sure you'll have some questions afterwards. But essentially, a number of the technical controls that we've been implementing to give assurance that we're in a good place. So we've reduced our admin account, which is essentially our highest privilege, and the remainder are accounts that need to be basis and are needed to carry out the antivirus. There's a project in flight at the moment to upgrade our platforms. We're rolling out new laptops in the near future, and then all raft of new tools that we're preparing and getting ready. We have introduced a number of other monitors and reporting on a monthly basis around sort of any detections, and so we've had the figures but not necessarily published them wider. So what we're a bit more proactive around sharing that information around detections and happens with each of those instances. So that's in flight. There was a number of accounts that were identified that are historic accounts that have been around for many years. So some of it was held back from public inquiries with COVID and so forth, but we're at a position where we're actually putting those down. So we're currently facing about what's called Microsoft Intune, which is some of the tools that are actually used to manage antivirus, and it's actually really helpful because it gives a position of your organisation. So for Southwark Council, what the percentage of the council is applying to industry standards around cyber and antivirus. As Dion has said about sort of the learning and staff awareness, I won't cover those because Dion's done that, and the same with the mission exercise. In terms of cyber incident response plans, we've had many exercises with emergency planning. We've had various teams participate. You know, there was a cyber incident. How would we manage the situation in terms of data, our response? You know, and can't say to residents, etc., during the process of the incident, who would be escalate those things. So that we've had some really good exercises, not just for technical perspective, but also the organisation understanding what their role is in. And so that's actually been really helpful. And then, so there's a couple of other things around network access control. So we are currently reviewing what that means is when you're in, when you're also working with the council or in council offices, being able to fully connect to the network. There are some recommendations that we need and some products that we're evaluating in the marketplace. Gives us the right level of value against cost. These probably a huge bit of a market analysis with this technical. And then there's been a number of sort of views around policies. Certain controls which have been, by the perspective, with a good place. We have a good quality management system and review periods for each of those.
Members have any questions for you? Michael.
Thank you again very much for your presentation. I guess since the pandemic, we've been moving towards kind of being more IT service, working more remotely, which is added risk in terms of both how we access kind of the network itself and what sort of own devices we use. And more recently, I think there's been an encouragement from the council to allow use own devices on the network itself. What I'm trying to get at is, as we push to kind of use our own devices, work more remotely, which increases kind of cybersecurity, and as your team start to do more cybersecurity, we think we're kind of implementing changes ahead of the cybersecurity initiative we're bringing in, or do you think we're actually meeting it? I'm just there's a part of me that kind of think it's great we're kind of moving towards kind of working remotely and everything else that comes with it and more flexibility. But are we working too fast in doing that, and should we slow down to maybe get your team doing what it needs to do at the level in which it needs to do it before we do that? Or it'll be useful to hear which comes first, or whether we're moving at the right level.
So I think if you asked me that question 2 years ago, I would have had concerns. I think the technology wasn't mature enough in some, and we put ourselves in positions that wasn't ideal. Southwark's done a lot of investment in its tools, and I believe that we're in potentially a good place where I think the balance is about right. We have a lot of work to do to make sure that we stay on top of things. So as we introduce, I don't know, more modern systems for applications, we have those types of controls. What my belief is, a bigger risk to council around third-party suppliers. You often hear in the news that there's been an incident else or whatever the case. My instinct is that we need to just make sure that we're managing in the right way, and that goes for my service and any service will work to other suppliers as such. So I think where we are is fine. We can always do more.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Just a couple of things. So we heard last time about kind of devices that are sort of we're not quite sure where they are. They're sort of at home and maybe then ask about that and just update on that. Have you any devices that was and I appreciate that they're kind of not in use. They're sort of maybe but it'd be good to hear about that if that's okay. And then just sort of related to that was this like devices need to come into the building a certain regularity, don't they? Get the updates, and that was causing issues. Devices still working from home for extended period, or because they were on parental leave or sick leave. It affects councillors specifically because councillors often work remotely and maybe aren't into that frequently, and as like devices like not receiving updates, and then it kind of sort of IT issues, and then not access their emails, and so that's like very specific to councillors, but I think it's wider to the workforce. So ask an update on those.
So the devices. So if I reflect back on last meeting, there's historically a number of devices that seem dormant as a part of the what tends to happen, or what should happen, is that when the device is not used after 90 days, it gets disabled. So although it's still what they call an object in network, it's disabled, so it's unable. And the second question, when they don't get the update, they end up having to get their updates, and if the devices aren't at a certain security level, then they can't. They get removed off the network, and that's part of the experience that councillors and staff have received. Is that it's disruptive. It's a bit of a security measure. Some of the temp laptops, some members of staff might use cupboards for when they come and join and so forth, and then when that cupboard, they're out of date, haven't connected. Example that you said that staff may not come into the office as well. So those are by design, not helpfully sometimes, because it's a security measure to ensure that anything that connects to our network is at a certain level. And in terms of the objects or the computers that the accounts that had been highlighted in the report, it was a tidy up exercise, housekeeping. And we should have completed the objects, although they didn't post to the council. They should have removed from, because the argument there is if somebody's able to enable those, and then they pulled out a cupboard, or however got one, they were able to re-enable it. They couldn't really use it. So by removing them off the network is. We're making sure that those we will face it now. Operational management shared service.
Thanks very much for this. So just looking at our 96. 94, 95, 96. Which looks at cybersecurity, asset hardware management. So you're slipping a bit on quite a few of them today. Do you anticipate any more slippage, or are you confident on?
You answer. Are you aware?
Okay, yes, I'm aware of the report. I'm trying. I can't requirement, so I don't have that. I'll be able to answer.
Yeah.
Right, so it's if in reflection to the policies as such that was identified with the asset management, I do not see any slippage. I have drafts ready, which I think is ready to
we shared operational management group. Our processes are generally signed off by all some of the service as such. So the number 3 in that, in terms of the laptops or devices, that is already there should be no step that's been completed. Uh, 3B, we still have some more work to do around identifying stolen laptops and around if the processes are in place, flows are in place with our and pick it up. So it's ultimately there, but there's a little bit more work to come. There's certain scenarios you might have, like identifying there's a SIM card in there and making sure a couple of steps out. Oh, so no, I don't believe that any of them should pass yet.
Thanks for that. A different question. I've done my my videos for November. Make sure I was up to date and I self-declare as being up to everything. What is your report back so that Clive knows people under his management have been responding there? Is it 100% or is 13%? How does he know? How does Doreen know in their directorate how far they've gone, how much they've got? Because I think the video's a good, positive thing. I'm pretty worried about colleagues' ability to, and look, most people are not looking at most of those people.
Yeah, total agreement. There's a risk is staff not essentially not having that information they aware of new approaches. So the platform active directory, so we get a list of names. So because we've just launched the processes that people do, and they'll get a second one where people done those videos. Then we've got relationship in technology who goes to each of the directors, so they'll be will individually training. It's been mandated 3 years now, and we will,
Any member of the committee like to speak?
Thanks very much, Kurt. So this is probably the item looking at the experience of College Hospital, of Guys, of PFL, all very local, right on our doorstep, and the impact that has on. To being really confident, we are as far ahead as possible. I think. So I'd like to make a presentation first meeting next year, have an update on typically ask office with an update on everything we're doing, field detail on party supply, third party supply listed, what's happening, confident that things are moving in the right direction. Good to have these assurances from every third party supplier up to director at the last, the acting strategic director at the last fine was.
So I agree with your perception of risk. Absolutely appropriate. We're doing a report back in what I'm assuming will be the springtime. If you're happy, councillor, that we get outside the detail that you want to.
I'm thinking.
Do we agree there? Swiftly on to 8. Inquiry. Well,
thank you, Chair, and thanks for the opportunity to come to committee to update on important piece of work that we've been working on over recent months. Just to say, hopefully you've all had a chance to read the report. I'll just summarise briefly what's contained within the report. This forms part of a broader piece of work around member experience. And of course, in terms of members' inquiries, it's important that we get it right. So from a perspective that members' inquiries are responded to in a timely fashion, and in terms of quality, the quality is of the high standard. Often when constituents come to you and other members with inquiries and complaints, they've often tried other channels. So we recognise that, and it's important that as a council, we give you the information which enables you to address residents' concerns possible. So the piece of work as part of this broader member experience, which was led by Doreen, Assistant Chief Executive Governance and Assurance, covered a number of important factors, but the members' inquiries piece fed back following the corporate peer review, which highlighted those two key issues that timeliness across the council wasn't as good as it could be, and the quality of responses could be better. So we've had a team in place to look at how we improve this. The board, which included a member officer working group, and is working to improve the process going forward. But of course, you're best placed to tell us how the improvements are, if you're seeing them, how they're coming through. Performance reporting, so from a reporting perspective, CMT, corporate management team, have regular reports, performance around timeliness, hold officers to account across council to ensure that we are seeing improvement. The leaders board as well holds officers to account, so the leader of the council has a report in terms of performance across not just members' inquiries, but the wider complaints process across all of the services as well. So in terms of what I'm trying to say, in terms of profile, it's at the highest level within the council, ensuring that we, across all departments within the council, are reporting back on improving the process. So just on that, performance improvement, so the last 2 to 3 months, we have seen improvements coming through. So in terms of performance overall, 9 days within the 10-day standard. Look, we want to be better, and we are striving to improve that across the council as well. But it's good to start to see improvements coming through following the piece of work that's happened. We also put in place a members review team that is purely there to address complex cases where residents, constituents have come back to members following receipt of a members' inquiry to ensure that we have a separate team to chase down responses again, particularly if they're complex, and that is working well as well. Members' procedure guide is in place, details the whole procedure. And particularly, this is important when we've got new members coming through as well. We can talk them through the process and then see how the members' inquiry process works. Quality assurance team is in place to address quality issues. That is fed back directly to services, and services held to account and get regular important information on how they can improve quality on the response. And look, in terms of work, this is ongoing. This is just the start of continuous improvement to improve the members' inquiries response throughout this year and ongoing into next, including some developments that we've planned. So I hope that gives a brief overview. Any questions around the document?
Members have any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, John, for that update. So, yeah, I think some of the most important things that we've been doing really as a council for a number of different reasons. I think it wasn't up to scratch. I think colleagues agree with that. And so it's been good to see the amount of effort that's going in to improve it as part of a wider piece. Important we've seen that as well. So with members review, the reason I think it is so key is that, as you said, people come to the councillors when the normal systems aren't working, and sort of actually the council running perfectly, there'd be no casework because they would never contact us because they would have gone to the various departments or would have been solved. And therefore, in terms of like tracking it, it's really key because it shows you perhaps where there's not the right resourcing. If there's loads of casework on a particular issue, I mean, obviously, housing will always be, that would be a key one. So, I wanted to ask, not really in relation to paper, but more to the issue in general, is in terms of training for officers in the council, has that happened around members' inquiries? And is there like an understanding that in terms of priorities, if something's coming from members' inquiries, it really should be like quite an urgent top of the agenda sort of issue, just because it does mean that it's not getting solved, there is a problem with this, they've come to their representative, etc. So just a kind of, I think that was a problem before, is that it felt like sometimes when you were raising members' inquiries, there was understanding that it was like, does actually need a response and full response and not partial response. Has there been training where that has been made clear and people sort of get that? And then tracking, in terms of tracking members' inquiries, is that happening in granular detail? Is that informing other organisation?
Thank you. Yeah, both really good points. I think there's a couple of things. So in terms of training, I think 400 officers went through a training process, but it's important that is a continual process. It's no, if we do it once in 1 year, it has to be on a regular basis to ensure that people are reminded of the importance of casework responded to effectively. In terms of the profile of responses, we do get exception reporting, so that's a weekly exceptions report, which highlights where we are getting close to overdue cases. We also have quality assurance, as I mentioned. So in terms of raising the profile of specific issues, or if there's issues that are coming up on a regular basis, it's for the service department. We'll highlight it. It's for the service department to then pick it up and deal with that. And when that leads into changes to operational management, particularly housing repairs is high profile. And you heard from the team strategic director that they've got a dedicated team in place for housing complaints. That is entirely needed. And we'll see how that improves over some months. But yes, quality assurance feeds back to service departments to improve quality.
Would any member like to speak further on this? Maggie.
Kind. Thanks very much for this. Do you think there is a job of work still to be done in terms of complaints? That is not the subject of this. I will ask the question.
So similarly, there's been a complaints improvement programme that's been happening concurrently with the members' inquiries process. and also some of the improvements that I've highlighted as part of members' inquiries and regular reporting, CMT involvement, holding service departments to account, the quality assurance process, all of that is happening across complaints. Yes, it is a work in progress, and we do have pressures in certain areas that we're working to those particular service departments to improve. The quality of response at stage 1 in certain areas needs to be improved to prevent progression to stage 2. That's recognised. We have seen significant volume at stage 2, and we've been dealing with a high volume of complaints at stage 2, which we've had additional resourcing in place to reduce. That is now within a more manageable workload, but that's an ongoing process to the end of March as well, where we'll start to see some of those improvements really taking effect. Unfortunately, once you get to a position where you have increasing workloads, it takes time for them to feed through the system to reduce the work, particularly around things like complaints when it gets to stage 2. So in answer to your question, it's a work in progress. There is improvement. We have some way to go.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Brief. Just to say the manager review team is anecdotally very pleased and really good and method and good resourcing for that, I think, is going forward. But anecdotally, people, council seems just accountability at the kind of senior level. So in your view, like the people at the top of each department, are they really clear, like what members' inquiries are coming forward? You know, is there that high level of accountability that you're talking with? And are commutes felt like it goes to department and they follow up, which sounds fair enough. But is there that focus on the high level oversight of the?
Thank you. It couldn't get higher. I think every strategic director, from the chief exec to strategic directors to directors, are fully aware of the need for improvement across the members' inquiries process, and we have seen improvement over recent months, and that will continue. So I'm happy and confident from a governance perspective that we are seeing improvements coming through, and it's for me and other officers to ensure that we maintain the focus across those areas where we do see performance levels dipping to ensure that the profile is maintained. There are things as part of the process like you will be notified within 48 hours of who it's referred to, so there's a named officer as well. So single point of contact, so things like that to improve the process, service departments. And of course, where there are changes in personnel, we have to ensure that changes take place quickly and effectively, so it isn't an issue for us going forward when we're allocating resources, cases to resources.
Right. Thanks again. There's a feedback mechanism, 1 to 5, and there are times when member services are a real lifeline for elected members. So we have people screaming down the phone as begging us to resolve things, and sometimes as councillors we're not sure what officer to approach, and member services is the sort of back line, the lifeline sometimes for councillors. As such, we want to maintain a good relationship. I think I speak for all councillors. We want to maintain a particularly good relationship with the team. Is the feedback mechanism anonymised? You understand how members might be a little bit concerned that if they were to give negative feedback, it may affect their relationship with their support staff?
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, it is. It's important that we do get feedback from members on the members' inquiry process. So encourage members to please feedback to us, and appreciate that you're all extremely busy as well. But the quality assurance process also does similar feedback on quality of responses as well. So for me, quality is key, and the team that manage quality really play an important role in getting the information back to the people that actually responded to the inquiries in the first place. But yes, it's anonymised and we encourage feedback.
We note the report. Thank you very much. And now on item 9, Treasury Management Strategy and Capital Strategy 2025-26. Wants to come in.
Thanks. Caroline Watson, our Chief Investment Officer, has been called away at very short notice. So big thanks to Roy Nolan, who's jumped in at really short notice to cover the report this evening alongside Tim. Roy's vastly experienced in the Treasury space, but is comparatively new with Southwark, so won't hold some of the corporate history that Caroline would. But for those questions, I'm sure Tim and
Thank you, Clive, and thank you, Chair. Good evening. I'd like to present to you the 2025-26 Treasury Management and Capital Strategies and supporting appendices. Each year, the Council is required to agree these documents following consultation with your committee. The reports have been prepared using the latest internal forecasts. Further to the budget and the US election, the economic forecast has been changed, and we believe that whilst the UK base rate will fall, albeit at a slightly slower than originally anticipated rate, long-term PWLB rates are likely to remain higher for longer, so less investment income and slightly higher debt costs. Strategies have been reviewed by Council's Treasury Management Advisor and their comments have been included. Briefly introduce the report and the appendices and invite your comments and questions. Excuse me. Right. So the report introduces the strategies and summarises the various appendices at a high level. Appendix A is the 10-year capital strategy, which gives a high-level summary of how capital expenditure, capital financing and treasury management activity contribute to the provision of local services. Appendix B is the treasury management strategy statement itself and details the forecast level investment and debt over the next 3 financial years and provides an update on the Council's local green bond initiative. Just to summarise, there's no change in policy from the strategy that you reviewed last year. Appendix C is the annual investment strategy, which is produced in accordance with Ministry for Housing Community Local Government guidelines, demonstrates the priorities of security, liquidity and yield in how the Council invests surplus funds. Appendix D is the annual minimum revenue provision statement, again produced in line with MHCLG guidance and sets out how the Council provides for the repayment of past capital debt and other credit liabilities. Finally, Appendix E sets out the prudential indicators which are required by SIPF's Prudential Treasury Management Codes of Practice. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Members have any questions? And
thanks very much. We should start off by asking Clive to tell the team thank you and congratulations on your audit, which looks very good. Our job is to hold people to account, but it was nice to see a little bit of audit later on the agenda. I had 2 questions. So, Arling Close, our advisors reckon the Bank of England base rate will be down to 3%. That true?
Well, that was at the time, Councillor. As you're probably aware, there's been some fairly significant activity and they've revised their forecast. The one that I received yesterday, their updated economic forecast, suggests that base rate will be 4.5% at the end of March 2025. And then their expectation is that it will fall slowly to 3.75% in March 26. So that's they've slowed their expectation of the rate declining as a consequence of inflationary factors, which inflation gets higher, down, increased interest rates to try and inflation in the economy.
And then my other question was about Appendix E, which is on page 40. I'll let you get there. On our page 40.
Just a paper.
So I was just looking at para 2 estimates of capital expenditure, and the estimates of capital expenditure drop off quite dramatically, even for the general fund. So you might expect the HRA. Is that partly because the council's just not set capital budgets that far ahead? They're going from 157 in the financial year down to 38 in 2028. An extreme drop.
I think it's fair to say the issue is not unique to this particular council. We're often quite ambitious with what we achieve in terms of our capital spend, and it does tend to get reprocessed. So you will often see quite large numbers in early years and smaller numbers. In reality, the amounts we will spend are not likely to be as they're laid out here. That's our best estimate at this point in time. What we would likely see is that some of that 157 in the current year might slip into 25, 26, and some of that 104 will slip back a bit further. It all depends on the type of project.
Thank you.
Sorry. Would any committee member like to speak any further on this matter?
Yeah, I think we should just notify the congratulations to the management team. Audit. We're noting the problems. We should.
Great. And move on to 10. Oh, forgive me. Yeah, sorry.
Good evening. Paul Bergin from the Corporate and Fraud team. Thank you very much for moving me slightly up the agenda. It's much appreciated. I think you've seen the report. Generally, it seems like business as usual. No massive increases or decreases anywhere. Unless you want me to go through the report, is there anything I can help with?
Members have all had the chance to see the report. Do they have any questions on the report? And it's on page 129 to 137. Doesn't seem like it. Thank you for coming. We note the report. We note the report. Thank you. Now, item 10, audit progress report. Welcome. Can you introduce yourselves?
Aaron Winter, partner from BDO and your Chief Audit Executive.
Angela Mason-Bell, manager from BDO.
Thank you. Do you want to speak to your report?
I'll take the report as read as we normally do. So it's our periodic internal audit progress report here. It primarily covers the 24-25 plan. So at the last committee meeting, you'll recall that we did the finalisation of the previous audit year. That is why you've got a number of summaries in this report on the conclusions of on reports that we've issued since that meeting. I'm pleased to say progress is good, engagement is good, and we've got the profile of work for the remainder of the audit agreement officers and a number underway, so we can have a lot of work and report going forward, and then informing our annual audit opinion and report which we issue next summer. In terms of the same applies to the school audit programme, which you already understand we do a number of school audits a year. And actually, we've taken on board some feedback and worked with the school's finance team to, you'll see, plan the audits much earlier to get them completed to avoid any delays of that programme. So we're confident that the remaining visits are planned this autumn term and then to be finalised in January. So we can wrap that up for this year. Our follow-up programme and the supplementary paper you'll see has maintained a level of implementation around the There's a small 0.4% decrease this time, but we've got updates, and obviously you've heard earlier from the management in terms of their working to ensure that they're implemented on a basis. What I wanted just to conclude on, and you'll see there's a couple of additional updates that we've included in this report. One to flag that we're already starting to think about 25-26, so the perpetual cycle of internal audit never seems to stop. So Angela has already started to plan that, and you'll see there's some summaries of the minimum requirements and components that inform our plan. And at the next committee meeting, we'll bring the initial drafts that will be in collaboration with management and the council. You'll also see there's a bit more of a detailed update on the schools audit programme, so obviously taking on board our annual report that's been presented before from 23-24. We've been working with the schools and education team to look at how that can work going forward, which is really great, and actually to work up how we can align our work to the wider assurance providers and third-party providers like Ofsted, and make sure we're kind of contributing to that overall holistic assurance. And then finally, the exciting news of the new global internal audit standards, and obviously they are due to go live at the beginning of January. At the moment, the consultation around the UK public sector element of those standards is under consultation, and there's actually a specific code of governance for local government. As a firm, but on behalf of the council, as your internal audit providers, we are part of that consultation. We'll be contributing to that, and obviously we'll bring any updates of what that means for our work, you as a committee, and obviously your management, to ensure that we're all up to date. And it will see some tweaks in our internal audit charter that we present to you as part of our plan anyway. The UK public sector element of the new global internal audit standards aren't applicable on the 1st of April, so they align to our standard annual reporting period. So that was all I was going to say at this moment in time, but happy to take any questions.
Members have any questions? Andy.
Thanks very much. This is really helpful again. I was looking at page 67, information request. Our compliance rate is below 90%. Do we happen to know what our compliance rate is or was? Telling us it's under 90% is informative. Like if it's 89%, that's one thing. If it's 3%, that's another. Thanks, that's helpful. And then in terms of follow-up, we're at about 92%, and we're noting page 58 of our agenda that several recommendation target dates continue to be revised multiple times, and that's preventing an improved implementation rate. Is that something you can comment on? Is that something Clive should comment on? How do we get those implementation rates up just a bit more, because we do keep coming back and seeing things. You can see them across. You can see implementation dates across 5 or 6 times. On occasions, I can understand, but it does feel like there are some problems with.
Happy to offer a response on that, and say it's obviously a challenge as a internal audit provider we get, and obviously they're owned by management. But there's a couple of things that we need to be really mindful of and need to probably improve. It's that initial challenge at the final report stage, and when we agree those recommendations, to be pragmatic on implementation dates. So I think there's a natural reaction sometimes that when we identify a risk, it has to be addressed. That is a good attitude to have, but we have to be realistic with time, resource, etc. So part of what we're doing as a team is to ensure that when we close down those reports and we get acceptance of those recommendations and details, they are realistic, and it does go up through the chain to the strategic directors to ensure that they have that challenge and understand that is that realistic as well. So that is on us, but also on management. And I'm not suggesting that we've just had that accepted in the past, but I think sometimes there's a tendency to complete a report, get it done, and accept that, but we need to take a step back and ensure it's realistic, and that's part of our review and quality assurance. When a final report final, I look at all of those dates now to ensure is that realistic based on an implementation of a system, for example. The other thing I think that's challenging, and you will see from some of the updates you discussed earlier on the cyber report is that some of our findings are broken down into multiple actions, and you'll see that 4 out of 5 of those actions have been done within that time. We're quite strict on them to be completed. So perhaps we need to think about how we break down those recommendations to be fairer on management's kind of implementation rates as well. That's my opinion, but I think it's very much a collaborative approach with management to get an accurate reflection on what is feasible in the timescales and needs management can do.
Yeah, through you, would get a comment on that?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, some of these are so old, one wonders the relevance still of them going forward. I think what we have suggested to the internal auditor is a bit of a clear out. So as a leadership team and as a committee, we are monitoring real risk to the organisation, and we're holding to account managers who are not against the things they've agreed to do or have been required to do. So I think a bit of representation. There's some of the issues that Aaron raises around how some of the recommendations are formed. There are 5 or 6 different points within the same recommendation. If I get implemented on it, and gives a slightly warped impression. But at the same time, you know, there are some material risks lurking within this, and I think to be fair to you as members, we need to be better in terms of how we articulate kind of risk areas that we really should be worried about and holding management accounts, and on occasions bringing some of those managers here to explain why they haven't been able to implement in other areas that we'll pick up as part of the usual audit cycle. And so it needs to be about the risk.
Thank you, Chair.
Chair, I have got the answer.
All right, thank you.
So the compliance rate in this
There's room for improvement.
Right. So that is broken down into individual directorates. It's probably fair to say that one directorate is significantly brought the weighted average down. So regular topic information that's into alongside the improvement action plan to ensure that that is held.
Do we want to make a recommendation, or do we just, you know?
Yeah, I had one issue which I think we should, if we've got Hakeem coming to the next meeting, we should flag up that we do want to talk about PMOs. Dr. Cooper Close on audit is not great. Haddon Hall, we're still waiting on them. I had evidence from their audit. That's one of the ones dragging out. We need to be sharper on TMOs, who in the past I've always thought were sort of leading lights in the housing field. The last, but clearly there have been issues. Some of the TMOs to be prepared. Talk to us about that.
Is that great? So the other point about where the delay is coming on the implementation rates, and that sometimes there are, in certain circumstances, problems where they are genuine sort of problems that we should be concerned about. Do we want to make a recommendation that we start that again, that we have done previously? Bring officers back?
Yes, please. I think they enjoy their evening in. Yes, definitely.
But we want to do it, presumably we want to do it sensitively and not just, you know, bring them all back, because in some circumstances, Aaron has described, it's quite understandable. Thank you, Clive.
I mean, if you're happy, Joe, if if I work with the internal auditor to design a process and then agree that with you, Chair, that we can then implement going forward.
Thank you very much. Now on item 11, progress report on the audit of statement of accounts. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, good evening, everyone. I'm Fleur Newbor, and I'm the external audit partner from KG, responsible for both the council and the audit. And we have a progress report for you this evening. Some key things just to draw out, and then really happy to take questions. So we are making really good progress with both audits, and we expect to complete our field work this side of Christmas. Due to the way in which the governance meetings fall, we will be bringing our final report to the committee on the 3rd of February, in advance of that, and we'll be in a position to sign both the opinions before the end of February. I thought it was worth just drawing out a few areas in our report. I don't think my page numbers align to yours in terms of pack. So on page 4 of my report, in terms of the council, just a reminder of the areas of biggest audit risk. So we are well progressed in a number of areas. One of the areas from an audit perspective that we've been looking at is the expenditure that's booked to the HRA and the risk that could be understated because of the pressures that we've already heard about. We've completed that work now. We haven't found any, so you'll be pleased to know. We're well progressed in terms of our work over management overrides. That's largely where we look at journal entries. And again, to date, we haven't found any issues. We've also looked at the assumptions that feed into the valuation of the pension obligation at year end, and we're comfortable with the assumptions that have been applied. So there are still some areas of work that are ongoing, in particular the valuation of land and buildings. So we're working quite closely with Cluttons, who are the valuers that the council has appointed to do the external valuations this year. We do have some questions and queries with them about their approach and the assumptions. In fact, we've got a meeting with them tomorrow, but that is progressing, and we expect that to complete over the next few weeks. On the pension fund, we're well progressed there too. Again, we've been doing some work. You have different valuers for the investment property there, but we've been doing some work on that, and that is close to completion. In terms of journal testing, again, we're close to completing that, and we've largely finished our work in terms of the investment valuation there. And as we sit here today, there's nothing really significant or material that we need to report in terms of audit adjustment. I won't go through the detail. Happy to take questions in a moment. In the appendix to this report, we've provided more detail. That's where we're looking at the arrangements that the council has had in place. This is in the year to March 24 to secure value for money, and we look at financial sustainability, governance arrangements, and the processes in place to achieve economy, efficiency, and effectiveness. And the detail on this really starts on page 10 of my report, and on the left-hand side there in the grey boxes, it shows you the procedures that we undertake, and then our findings at this stage. So we've still got some work to complete, but we're fairly well progressed. In terms of financial sustainability, it will not come as a surprise to you, I'm sure, that we're looking particularly at the arrangements that the council has put in place to manage the financial recovery of the HRA. So very useful hearing that report, of course, earlier today. It is clear and has been clearly reported that the HRA is under financial pressure. that in and of itself doesn't mean we think there's a significant weakness. You are not alone. We understand some of the drivers for that, but we're really keen to make sure that we're comfortable with the arrangements that were in place to try and address that over the course of the year to March 24. So that work is still in progress, and we will be reporting whether or not we have identified a significant weakness in that area, and we can talk to that when we come back to this committee in February. In terms of governance, which is on page 11 of the report, there are a couple of areas that we've been looking at there, and again, these won't be a surprise. And there's been useful information on some of this that's been touched on in this meeting already today. So I know it's an area of focus for both this committee and indeed the wider council. So there we're looking at some of those themes that have come out of TMO management and making sure that we're really comfortable that some of the recommendations raised as a result of the objection in 21-22 and indeed the internal audit work, some of those themes we're keen to make sure we're comfortable that those arrangements across the piece of the 17 TMOs is robust and appropriate. And we're also looking into the management of contractors, in particular on major repairs programs, again, because of some of the issues that we are aware of and that have come out of previous reviews and indeed correspondence that we've had from electors. So they're the areas that we think there are greater risks that we could conclude that there are weaknesses in the arrangements, but we haven't yet completed that work. But hopefully this gives you a useful flavour of how we are going about that work and the procedures that we are undertaking. So in response to those risks on pages 13, 14 and 15, we provided you with more information about what we're actually doing in that area, and that work is live at the moment and we're busy completing. I will pause there for questions from the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from members? You want to continue on?
That was all I had for this meeting. So
thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm the chief accountant. Just representing the council in terms of the accounts. We had originally intended to bring final accounts to this committee, but as you say, the audit has progressed substantially. We're not in a position to do that yet, so they will come to the February committee along an audit report ahead of the statutory deadline, which is mid February, which the government recently that is the legal backstop. We can't please. Should be okay.
Thank you for that. Look forward to giving this. Note report. Andy.
Chair, very, very happy to note the report. Looking through, so I think we're on top of most of the issues, the committee are focused on most of those issues. I think we should ask to flag to the Director of Housing team in the next meeting that we would like a report, governance level, the management of major works. We should not overlap with overview and scrutiny. I know I've been doing a lot of work, but we should focus on the governance issue. He should know that we want that at a time. It should be one aspect of focus on as it's flowing from what we hope will be.
Does everybody happy with that? Thank you. Item 13, review of members' code of conduct. Welcome. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I'll work on the basis that all members have read the report. It's just a very quick updating report to the committee in relation to the progress we've been making in terms of our review of our code of conduct. We set up a member of the working group that has progressed really well. We've had a high level engagement from members. And all this report sets out is that some further advice is required around other registrable interests. We're doing some work on that now with members, and that we are still on the timeline to have a code of conduct agreed by Council Assembly in March 2025, with a view to all our members signing up to whatever version of the code we decide to adopt by the time we get to the annual meeting in May. To take any.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doreen. So just in the papers, it talked about F7 giving training at the start of the year, and it says it was about the LGA code. So my recollection of that training is that it was focused mainly on current code and to make sure that everyone kind of knew the known principles. So I just wanted to clarify that in terms of, would you consider colleagues to have been sufficiently trained on the model code? That training is focused much more on current code and the known principles, which is right. Just clarifying that in terms of the.
Thank you. The training that we will have in January will be on whatever code that we decide to adopt or version of it, because I think it's important that we have that training ahead, fresh out any issues of finally agreeing that code in March. I think it's really important that the code applies to members, it applies personally, and they need to be absolutely clear about the implications of any changes we might make. At the moment, there's just one particular area that we are exploring because it's a change for us, and I think it's important that members are fully understand what, if we adopt those changes around other registrable interests, will mean, and there'll be an opportunity at that session in January to explore that further. In addition to that, I've also made the point that officers are continuing to provide advice to members on that. I've written to all members separately about some timelines for further updated advice and some options.
The question of other registrable interest, does that mean someone's significant other or people that relate are then the job they do is then put on Council's website?
Okay, already there is a requirement to disclose your partner, spouse's employment and certain other aspects on the register of interests. Other registrable interests relate to interests that are voluntary, so to speak, so they're not the statutory ones. So at the moment we are compliant with the registration of statutory requirement. Model code, if we adopt that, goes further and requires it requires a registration of other registrable interests. And if we decide to adopt the model that has a certain definition about other registrable interests, they're not disclosable pecuniary interests, they're other registrable interests. They are interests that you can voluntarily decide to register. We already have some of those on our register for members. And I think that depending on where we go, that could mean a wider aspect of interest that ends up in members' other registrable interest section of their declaration of interest.
Michael.
Thank you very much for kind of just the update and also kind of the work you and the committee has done in getting us where we are. Has there been a clarification on, I know in previous discussion, it wasn't certain to some members as to why we need it, why the changes, and I know that you said you go away and kind of clarify what the position is. If some members think if things are broken, why trying to change things? Has there been any clarification on that?
I should be able to have a more detailed paper out latter part of next week. This isn't a change we have to make. I think it's important that I say that, and I think the consultation with the groups has really helped them in terms of thrashing out the issues. But because we are looking at the model code currently has that requirement. I think as an authority, it's important for members to form a view and form an informed view about where we want to arrive at in terms of our other registrable. There are advantages and there are that. And I think we're working that through quite carefully so that we give members some options. It is a big change. I'm also very mindful that looking at this from the outside in, so to speak, I think it can, this area of interest is not without its complexities. And I think that if we introducing that change could cause some confusion, I think, at times, but we can work that through. As a matter of general principle, where members have had other registrable interests, the way that we have done that in the past, and this hasn't necessarily been written down anywhere, which is the way that we have worked as a form of custom and practice, it's worked quite well. There's been that members have raised that with the monitoring officer, one of their team. We've been giving the members the advice, and members have to on every occasion, as far as I can remember, have followed that advice. So that's often cases of where it's a question of bias or predetermination or something like that. We've advised members accordingly if they have decided not to publish. I think the other big question becomes the question about in relation to other registrable interests, and depending on where we land on that, at times the procedure to be followed can be slightly confusing. So you can only speak if somebody else is speaking on the matter, and then it's about leaving the room and not voting. So again, it's not that straightforward. I think we need to look at those options and come to a mechanism that works for the majority, if not all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doreen. I know there's sort of various clarifications on this that I'll still work through and date in the process. I just wanted to ask for a verbal update on benchmarking with other local authorities, and I'm aware that that might not be ready yet, but I think it's really important and useful to look at other local authorities, whether they have adopted the model code, partially adopted it and had any issues. So if you could verbal update on the benchmarking, I think it's grateful.
Thank you. When we first started this work, we did some benchmarking in relation to those authorities that have adopted the code, the LGA model code, that 50/50. What we are doing at the moment is that we're just looking to drill down a bit more, because that benchmarking exercise didn't tell us whether people adopted it wholesale as it was, or bits of it, particularly around other interests, seeing how much information we can gather around that. So that will also be contained in the report. We're still doing that. I'm in my inbox at the moment. It's done a bit more work around that so that we can benchmark that against broadly how other authorities do.
Would any member of the committee like to speak further on this matter? Are there any members, are there any amendments we want to put forward? Gimme, number one. Jump to the communication. Can we note the review of the code of conduct and the timelines of finding? Thank you very much. You're presenting on the review of the communications protocol.
I am, Chair. Thank you. Again, I'll take this report as read, and just for a point of clarification, I think Virginia has handed round. What happened was that when the report was published, the marked up version of the protocol wasn't included, so that members could could clearly see that side by side comparison. So I hope you've all had the marked up version now from Virginia. Yes. So, Chair, this just makes some minor amendments to our communications protocol, and they've really been included to do a couple of things. First of all, to update in relation to visits by ministers, shadow ministers and other politicians, just clarity around that. We've also made some changes in relation to documents being prepared for public consumption, and we've also done a bit of housekeeping to pick up change of officer names and use more gender neutral language within the code. We have pulled forward the statutory provision into an appendix, and we are proposing to make sure that the document, in line with a better way of doing our policies, has some useful links at the end of it. So if you're using the document and it cross-reference, you can click into those links when it's finally uploaded, and it will take you to places like the Code of Conduct, which will be whatever Code of Conduct we actually end up signing up to. But at the moment, it's our current Code of Conduct and the Constitution and detailed public.
Any member wishes to have any questions? No. Are there any amendments put forward to the communication?
Yeah, I'm going to be radical here. Doreen has a very finely honed legal mind. She loves code of conduct. She loves bills. She lives and breathes it. And I appreciate that. I can see a number of completely, helpful amendments. But for a councillor, this has got to be read both by the legal team and senior officers and councillors. I think starting off the document by talking about it in a very plain language is better. So at the moment, we're knocking out paras 1 and 2, which I think are really helpful, and we're starting with a very legalistic, when publishing any material at any time, Local Government Act, Code of, I just don't think that is as helpful. And I don't think moving all the details to the appendix is the right way of doing it. So in terms of plain English for different audiences, I think we should keep 1 and 2. We can get rid of the scope of the protocol, we can get rid of the legal framework. But I also think moving it to the appendix makes it less clear and not more. And so unless Doreen can convince me I'm completely wrong, I think keeping 1 and 2 in there, not moving it into the appendix and leaving it there, just makes it easier for a councillor to understand without a legal mind.
Whatever makes it easier for members and members of the public, I'm very happy to revert back. And so I have no problem whatsoever.
In which case, I like to propose we keep paras 1 and 2. We keep the detail there, don't put it into an appendix, but then accept all of the other very sensible updates to style and gender and officer names.
I don't know how much any of us had the chance to read this, but I'm not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can put it to the document. Yeah,
Is it 1 and 2 that isn't it?
Yeah, 1 and 2, and I think no, don't move it to the appendix. Just keep that bit, that preamble in there, because it makes much more sense to a councillor. You're being told, yeah.
So what I can do is that I can make those amendments. I think both of those and just circulate what the version then looks like to the. Would that be helpful?
Yeah, that would be very helpful. Thank you. Now move on to item 15, which is independent members of audit, governance and standards. Recommendation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I bring this every year. This is simply a confirmation of the process for the membership of independent planners for the Civic Awards Subcommittee. Every year there are 4 members of the committee and 4 independent members who offer the point of view of members of the public on who should receive Civic Awards. I would be delighted to take any recommendations that members have for people who might be outside the usual scope of people who would usually get in touch with in the voluntary community sector. So if you have any recommendations, please do let me know. And just a brief note that the report mentions that these are either happening in January 2023 and March 2023. Obviously, it's happening in 2023. The final meeting of the Civic Awards Subcommittee will be on the 3rd of March 2023. So, have to be free that night.
Thank you.
Theory. So have we already agreed which members? And then in terms of the 4 independent, I'm very happy. But is there any guidance?
The guidance of what we seek to look for is listed in the report as a rough outline of what they're going to do, what kind of thing that, what kind of pension they to pay. This is mostly because it's for the Audit, Governance and Standards Committee, and year on year we've come to in February with a list of names and profile on, and we've had feedback over the year saying that officers don't always give the choice to make. It's difficult when we review a list of 4 names. We don't want to encourage members of the public, members of the community, to names for they necessarily get to do. On the other hand, it's also important to have a chance to decision on who takes part in this. You don't just have to prove, oh well, officers have picked the 3 people who are exactly, yeah. So we very much appreciate any help you have to offer, any guidance, your extensive network. Very much, thank you.
Right to email report.
Yes, Chair, can I suggest perhaps we say we do that by the end of the month? And I suspect, having been involved in the process before, that what would probably be most useful for Virginia is if we've also kind of accompanied it with any information about why you think they'll be good, because I may know someone good in my old neighborhood of Oakham Road, but Virginia may have not heard of them at all, and may spend a great deal of unnecessary time kind of think about why they deserve it. Would that be helpful for you?
So we usually offer engagement with our help and support in this. So absolutely, very much, yes, appreciate. Essentially, this is us asking for your advice. Thank you very much. I know that a lot of this is it's a balancing out. Are we asking in favour? But it would recognition that Southwark, that the council thorough gives to a lot of people within the borough who are important to us. Being able to take part in that, being able to say that your point of view, your voice,
And should I just also say in the past, as Andy would specify, that we've had the challenge of having less option from a kind of gender balance perspective. We're still in that same position now in terms of the contribution from the year, because we've got less gender balance would mean that I would certainly encourage that any suggestion from you should focus it on making sure there's a strong female representation, because we'll need the, in my own view, the community representative on that committee.
Thank you, Chair, for clarity. Would we expect attendance just on one evening, the 3rd of March next year?
yes, absolutely. All of the information will be circulated to all, and it is only on that evening. But they would have access, and we would ask commitments to read, and they get those standard 5 day.
That's the last item on the agenda for today. Thank you very much.
Chair, could I ask just one thing? We used to have a one-page report which was work plan. We add that back in again. Barry mentioned that February. That wouldn't have been at the top of. I wouldn't have realised that. And so a little forward plan, single page. We used to have it every.
Open the meeting. It's that.
On that, Chair, I thought that the training items coming this day, because Ray and Albert who doing that work from the council. So just to query that and if that's which fits in.
Virginia, get back to you.
Thank you.